What's going on YouTube? It's James Ong here, and this is part 2 of the new player guide series to starting out in Rimworld. Today we're going to be focusing on growing your colony, both through acquiring more colonists, as well as growing both economically and technologically. If you missed part 1 of the new player guide series, you can check that out here. And if you'd like to see more Rimworld guides, you can check the description of the video for the complete Rimworld version 1.0 guides playlist. And hey, if you enjoy the video today, please do leave a like. These actually do really help me out. And of course, you can subscribe for even more Rimworld content. Let's get started. I'm going to begin by focusing on how we acquire more colonists. The first thing that you should probably note here is that your choice of storyteller is ultimately going to guide and determine your colony size, restricting certain events once you reach specific population limits. Phoebe Chillax and Cassandra Classic both have the same guidelines when it comes to colonist numbers. Each want you to have a minimum of 4 colonists, a maximum of 13, and with your colony reaching critical mass at size 18. The storyteller will try to rapidly get you to the minimum number of colonists by sending events that will simply and easily provide you with recruitable characters as long as you are below their minimum desired colonist value. Once above this number, the storyteller will begin to periodically feed you new events that will allow you to increase your colony number, but may require some amount of work or effort on your behalf. However, once your colony passes the point of critical mass, the storyteller will now look to reduce your colony's population by restricting events with the possibility of giving new colonists and making prisoners harder to recruit. This is where Randy Random differs from the other 2 AI storytellers, only capping the critical mass of colonists at a whopping 50, making this the only logical choice of storyteller if you're looking to create an extremely large colony. In today's version of Rimworld, there's a lot of new events which will allow you to acquire colonists reasonably easily in the mid to early game. Being prepared to caravan early on is a good way of helping you to grow quickly, both due to quests explicitly providing new colonists and by potentially capturing pirates and raiders that your caravan may run into. But still, the most reliable way of actively growing your colony is by capturing and recruiting prisoners. To do this, you're first going to need a prison, which should be comfortably furnished and hopefully be wardened by a colonist with some degree of skill or passion for the social skill. As an absolute minimum, your prison should be furnished with beds, a table and chair, and a source of recreation. I find that having medical supplies close by helps out as well, as when you capture prisoners, they're more often than not going to be in need of some kind of medical treatment, and depending on their happiness with the state of their living conditions, they may even go berserk from time to time, beating up on your wardens or fellow prisoners, and then requiring even further medical attention. Okay, so let's do the very basics of prisoner recruitment. You can see we've got our 3 prisoners tucked away safely in the prison here. Let's go and take a look at these guys. So how we recruit them, very simply, is we go to the prisoner tab and we select the action that we want to do with them here. I'm choosing to recruit 2 of these guys, so Flo and Risa here I have set to recruit, and Diver here I am not recruiting. I'll get to that in just a second. How we make sure this is going to happen is we make sure that we have someone on the wardening job. So we've got Sister on the wardening job here. She will take care of the recruitment for these guys. Now before Sister cleans things up too much in here, let's take a look at these guys' needs. We can see that they consider this barrack to be awful. Now the main thing with recruiting prisoners quickly is taking care of their needs, so making sure that they're happy. If they're happy, they'll be recruited quicker. This is the biggest factor when it comes to the speed of prisoner recruitment and how well you can recruit prisoners. So you can see these guys now actually consider this barrack to be somewhat impressive now that we've cleaned that blood up. blood is a very big debuff to an area, so if there's blood somewhere, if there's blood all over the floor somewhere, it's, not necessarily very nice looking, is it? So now that this is cleaned up, these guys feel a bit better about this, and yeah, this is a pretty decent sort of prison setup here. And like I said, the main thing about recruiting people quickly is getting their moods up. So take a look at their moods here and see if you can do anything about any of their debuffs. For example, sweaty, it is actually quite hot in here. So if we went to put a cooler in here, we could go and get this area a little bit nicer for these guys and just get rid of this this slept in the heat and sweaty kind of debuffs that these guys are getting from it being hot in this room. Yeah, so that's the very basics of prisoner recruitment. Like I said, select the interaction here. You can see Sister is interacting with one of our prisoners we're choosing to recruit, and make sure that you have a warden on the wardening duty. Another thing that's good to do, obviously, you want to check which characters you want to recruit, which ones are good. Also check their health. We can see that Diver here actually has psychite addiction. He's suffering from psychite withdrawal. So we probably don't want to keep him around too long. And in fact, I'm going to say right now, just release this guy. And another reason that we might want to release him is... he is a pyromaniac. And as we know, we've had a few bad experiences with pyromaniacs. Goddamn Rogers. We probably don't want another pyromaniac in the colony. So I'm going to get Sister to go and get rid of him there. Another thing that I kind of like to do with my prisons is put a nutrient paste dispenser in the prison. Once these guys are back on their feet and are able to move around and stuff again, they will go and feed themselves from the nutrient paste dispenser. And this just saves a little bit of work for my warden. So Sister, my warden here, will only have to come into the prison to interact and try to recruit prisoners. She won't have to come in here to feed them, which is something she will have to do if I don't have some automatic food sources nearby. But yeah, because I've got this, it just saves a little bit of extra work. So Sister can go and get about her other jobs in the colony and doesn't have to come in here to feed these guys. Is there anything else I want to mention? The last thing I want to mention is there's no difference here between recruit and reduce resistance. Actually, Yeti did a video on these, comparing them recently. Basically, the only reason this is here is if you just want to get a little bit of experience for your warden and not actually recruit someone. So, for example, we could have kept that previous character who just disappeared. I didn't get to catch his name again. We could have kept him in the prison here and just interacted with him, but not actually tried to recruit him, and that would give Sister a little bit more experience. But doing that, we have to feed him, so he's going to eat some of our food while he's here, and he's suffering from psychite withdrawal, so he's probably going to to go bonkers at some point. I mean, I could have cut his legs off and left him in the prison. That's always kind of fun to do, and then Sister could get some experience there. But yeah, it's a balance of if you've got enough food and all that sort of thing, as to whether you might want to just keep someone there for the sole purpose of getting skill for your warden. Another tactic you can use to rapidly grow a colony is capturing visitors who come to trade or stay at your colony for a time. I'd only recommend doing this once you're at or over the minimum colonist limit, which for all storytellers is 4. However, if you do see a particularly inviting looking character, perhaps you could choose to attempt to capture them before your colony reaches this point. This will obviously drastically affect your standings with the faction who the character you've captured belonged to. However, does this matter? Well, not really from a gameplay perspective. As long as you maintain at least one friendly faction, you will always receive trade caravans, and having more friendly factions doesn't seem to affect the frequency of friendly trade visits. Conversely, having more enemies won't increase the frequency of enemy raids. Instead, this is just going to provide a greater pool of options for your storyteller to pull from when it does decide to throw a raid at you. So, angering a lot of factions is not something which is going to affect you adversely. One of the best ways to grow your economy is through producing money crops. That is, crops that you'll use predominantly for producing goods to be traded for silver. Growing crops for the purpose of making silver is one of the best ways to grow your colony's income, as planting and harvesting crops takes minimal work investment, with the biggest time sink being the wait for your crops to grow and mature. During this time, your colonists can go about their other jobs in your colony, whilst your money crops progressively pump out a reasonably passive income. Another great thing about these income crops is, well, they're also drugs, and that's pretty great, right? But seriously, once your colony has an efficient and stable production line for producing these drugs, it won't matter so much if colonists become addicted to something, as you can easily supply this addiction. And all of these drugs have various positive side effects which can make your colonists work harder, sleep less, and be more immune to pain, and therefore less likely to be downed during a fight. Eventually, you could think of a little yayo in the morning as simply your colonist's morning coffee, only perhaps a little more potent. So let's take a look at some of the most lucrative drug crops. At the top of the list we have ambrosia, which I'm merely including here for completeness. However, you can't grow this plant yourself. It relies on a random sprout occurring somewhere and doesn't have a huge yield per harvest. However, it's still a very lucrative item to sell, and an ambrosia sprout will remain on your map, giving multiple harvests, so the money can start to add up if you're lucky enough to get a sprouting of it. Go Juice and Wake Up, whilst both very lucrative, each require Nutramine to produce, which is an ingredient that can only be supplied through trade, and therefore will take some financial capital for you to be able to start acquiring and producing consistently. However, despite the fact you'll be spending silver on some of these ingredients, they remain two of the most lucrative drug types for both raw market value and value per ingredient. So once your economy is established, these can really take your money-making potential to the next level. To get to this point, you'll want to start by producing some of the less refined drugs like flake, smoke leaf, and yayo. Note that whilst yayo has a higher market value than flake, flake is actually better value per ingredient as it requires half the number of leaves to produce a single unit of the drug. So in terms of pure financial gain, flake is a much better drug to be selling on the open market. Smoke leaf is also a fantastic early moneymaker, as the plant has a lower skill threshold to grow, provides a very high yield, and grows reasonably quickly. So in my mind, smoke leaf is one of the best options for an early moneymaker, as it's so simple to produce and easy to grow. Beer and psychite tea are less worth your time purely as a money crop. However, beer in particular is a fantastic source of happiness for your colony, as it's not hugely addictive and doesn't have the work speed and movement speed penalties associated with smoke leaf. So making some beer to sell, as well as for your colonists to use as part of their recreation, is never a bad idea. There is more detail that I could break down from the numbers on this table. However, I'm going to let you guys do that as you will. In the description of this video, you will find a link to the image for this table, so you guys can peruse that in your own time. Let's briefly touch on growing technologically. There's not a huge amount to cover here. In part 1, we talked about some techs that you might want to research early. Now that you understand drug production, perhaps researching the drug producing techs will be something that you see as worth your time. There's definitely a lot of silver to be gained from drug production, as we've demonstrated. A little pro tip here with researching speeds: you can build more than a single research bench and assign multiple colonists to the researching job. Having multiple research benches in operation will increase your research speed. So if you really want to crank out some technology, this is a method that you can use to do exactly that. I hope you found part 2 of the new player guides helpful. If you enjoyed this video, perhaps you're looking to start a new colony. Perhaps you need the modular base design, the ultimate death trap. And of course, if you'd like to see more Rimworld content, you can subscribe for even more videos.